Ladies and gentlemen, let me tell you something real today. The most powerful voice you will ever hear in your life is not mine, not your friends, not your family. It's your own. What you say to yourself when nobody else is around determines how far you go, how much you achieve, and how strong you stand in the face of challenges. If you talk down to yourself, if you keep saying, I can't, I'm not good enough, or I'll never make it, then guess what? That's exactly what will happen. But if you change that conversation, even for just 3 days, you will see a shift in your spirit, in your energy, and in your results. The most consistent voice you will ever hear in your life is your own. And whether you realize it or not, that voice has been guiding, shaping, and building the direction of your life from the very beginning. Every single thought you speak inwardly to yourself leaves a mark on your mind. And those marks eventually become the blueprint for your destiny. If you walk around telling yourself that you are not enough, that you will never measure up, or that success is only reserved for other people, your life will quietly follow that script. But when you learn to use your voice in a different way, when you learn to speak to yourself with power, vision, and belief, you open the doors to possibilities you never imagined. It's not the world outside that has the loudest influence. It's the dialogue within your own heart and mind. Think about it. When you wake up in the morning before anyone else has said a word to you, what's the first voice you hear? It's your own. When you stand in front of a mirror, that reflection doesn't just stare back. It echoes whatever words you've been saying about yourself. When you face challenges, when you face rejection, when you face setbacks, the first response is not someone else's. It's your own voice reminding you either to keep going or to give up. That's how powerful it is. If that voice inside tells you you're finished, then you will stop fighting. But if that voice says you still have more in you, you will push past obstacles that looked impossible. Many people don't even realize that the negative self-talk they repeat daily is chaining them to a life smaller than the one they were designed for. Every I can't, every I'm not ready, every what if I fail becomes a wall standing in front of them. But the truth is those walls are built out of words, and the same voice that created them has the power to tear them down. Your destiny doesn't respond to your fears. It responds to your declarations. When you speak to yourself with strength and determination, you give your life permission to rise to the level of your words. There are countless stories of people who had nothing, who had every reason to quit, but they made a decision to talk to themselves differently. They stopped saying, I'm broke, and started saying, I'm preparing for abundance. They stopped saying, I'm weak, and started saying, I'm stronger every day. That shift in language did not magically change their circumstances overnight, but it transformed their mindset. And once the mindset changes, the choices change. Once the choices change, the outcomes follow. That's how powerful self-talk is. Imagine you had a friend who constantly told you that you were worthless, who repeated every mistake you've ever made, who laughed at your dreams, who reminded you daily of your flaws. Would you spend much time with that friend? No. But many of us allow that exact same treatment from ourselves. We live with a voice that criticizes us more than it encourages us. And then we wonder why our confidence is weak. You cannot build a strong future with a voice that keeps tearing you down. You must decide to become your own greatest supporter, your own cheerleader, your own encourager. Because in the end, it's not what others say about you that matters. It's what you believe when you talk to yourself alone. This is why you must train your voice to serve your future, not your fears. Start speaking life into your day before the world has a chance to speak death into it. Tell yourself that you are capable even when you feel unsure. Tell yourself that you are blessed even when you don't see blessings yet. Tell yourself that you are growing even when you feel stuck. Words are seeds, and your voice is planting something in your mind every single day. If you plant negativity, doubt, and fear, don't be surprised when you harvest frustration and regret. But if you plant faith, hope, and confidence, you will eventually harvest strength, progress, and victory. At the end of the day, the destiny you step into is the echo of your own voice. If your voice says you are defeated, your destiny will agree. If your voice says you are victorious, your destiny will align. That's the law of belief. That's the power of thought. And that is the truth that separates those who rise from those who settle. The voice you hear most, your own, shapes your destiny. And when you learn to control it, when you learn to master it, you gain the key to unlocking the life you were truly meant to live. Positive self-talk builds confidence, courage, and clarity. And it's one of the most overlooked yet most powerful habits a person can develop. Every time you choose to replace doubt with belief, fear with faith, and confusion with direction, you strengthen the core of who you are. Confidence doesn't come from other people telling you that you can do it. It comes from you telling yourself that you can. Courage doesn't appear out of nowhere. It grows each time you convince yourself that you are stronger than your fears. Clarity isn't always given. It's built when your inner voice guides you with words of focus and determination. That's why self-talk isn't just a motivational trick. It's a foundation for living a life of purpose. Think of confidence like a muscle. The more you exercise it, the stronger it becomes. But you can't exercise it with silence, and you can't exercise it with negativity. You exercise confidence by speaking words of strength to yourself even when you don't feel strong. You tell yourself, I got this, not because the situation looks easy, but because you refuse to let doubt control the outcome. You remind yourself that you are worthy, not because everything in your life has worked out perfectly, but because you know deep down that your worth isn't defined by your circumstances. Each time you use positive self-talk, you're lifting the weight of insecurity. And over time, that weight becomes lighter because you've built inner strength. Now think about courage. Courage is not the absence of fear. It is the decision to move forward in spite of it. And how do you make that decision? By the words you tell yourself in the moment when fear shows up. When life tells you it's too risky, your inner voice has to tell you, I can't let fear hold me back. When the odds seem impossible, you have to speak to yourself with the courage that says, if anyone can break through this, it's me. Without that self-talk, fear takes the microphone. And when fear has the microphone, it will always talk you out of opportunities. Positive self-talk is what drowns out fear's voice and gives courage a chance to step up. Then comes clarity. Life is full of noise, opinions, distractions, failures, and setbacks. If you let all that noise control your mind, you'll never find your path. But when you practice positive self-talk, you filter through the noise. You tell yourself, this is where I'm going. This is what matters to me. This is the vision I will not give up on. That kind of talk brings order to the chaos. It helps you focus on the bigger picture instead of being lost in the small problem. Clarity doesn't mean everything is easy, but it means you see where you're going and you remind yourself daily of the direction. The beautiful thing about positive self-talk is that it doesn't require anyone else's permission. Nobody has to approve of the words you speak to yourself. Nobody has to validate your belief. You don't need a cheerleading squad. You don't need applause. You don't even need recognition. All you need is the discipline to tell yourself what you need to hear, not what your fears want you to hear. This is why So many people who succeed in life often talk about affirmations, vision boards, and mental focus. It's not superstition, it's science and spirit combined. The words you repeat to yourself create pathways in your brain. And over time, those pathways become the default direction your mind takes. That's why if you constantly talk down to yourself, negativity becomes automatic. But if you keep feeding your mind with empowering words, positivity becomes the natural response. Consider how many times in your life you've faced something difficult. Maybe you had to step into a new job. Maybe you had to face rejection. Maybe you had to recover from a failure. Think back to those moments. What got you through? Yes, maybe there was support from others, but deep down, the fight was won or lost in the words you whispered to yourself. You either said, I can't take this and gave up, or you said, I will get through this and pressed on. A small decision of words made the biggest difference. Positive self-talk is not lying to yourself. It's not about pretending problems don't exist. It's about choosing to focus on the truth that lifts you instead of the lie that limits you. It's about reminding yourself that you've survived harder things, that you've overcome obstacles before, and that you're capable of more than you think. Confidence, courage, and clarity are all waiting for you, but they only come alive when your inner conversation makes room for them. The reality is, you can't always control the words other people speak about you, but you can control the words you speak about yourself. And at the end of the day, those are the words that matter most. Positive self-talk is the fuel for confidence. It is the shield for courage, and it is the light for clarity. When you master that, you'll realize that you've had the key to strength, growth, and purpose within you all along. You just needed to use your own voice to unlock it. Success always begins in the mind long before it shows up in the real world. And that is a truth many people underestimate. Every achievement, every invention, every breakthrough, and every transformation first lived as a thought before it became reality. Nothing you see around you today, the buildings, the technology, the art, the businesses, existed until someone believed in it strongly enough to bring it out of their imagination and into the world. That's why the mind is the true birthplace of success. If your mind can't see it, your life will never hold it. If your mind can't believe it, your hands will never build it. The outside world is simply a reflection of the inner world. And the person who wins the battle in their thoughts has already won half the fight in life. So many people wait for proof before they believe. They wait until they have the money, the opportunity, the resources, or the approval before they allow themselves to think it's possible. But success doesn't work like that. Success requires belief before evidence. It requires vision before validation. When you decide in your mind that something is possible, you open the door for opportunities to walk in. When you decide in your mind that it's impossible, you close that door before it even had a chance to swing open. That's why your mindset is the soil in which your future grows. Plant weak thoughts and you'll get weak results. Plant strong, faith-driven thoughts and you'll see success begin to form. Think about some of the greatest success stories you've heard. They rarely start with comfort and certainty. Most of them began with a person who had nothing but a thought, nothing but a vision, nothing but a determination in their mind. They didn't wait until everything was perfect. They started with belief. And that belief became a magnet for the resources, the people, and the ideas they needed. It's not magic. It's the natural process of the mind shaping reality. What you continually think about becomes what you focus on. And what you focus on becomes a path you follow. But here's the challenge. If you let negativity and doubt dominate your thoughts, they will shape your reality too. If your mind is constantly filled with fear of failure, you will unconsciously avoid risks that could have led to success. If you constantly tell yourself you're not enough, you won't even step onto the stage where your talents could shine. That's why mastering your thoughts is not optional. is essential. The difference between a person who rises and a person who stays stuck is not talent alone. It's the mindset that either fuels the talent or buries it. Your mind is a garden, and every day you are planting seeds. If you don't plant seeds of success, determination, and faith, the weeds of fear, doubt, and discouragement will take over. That's why it's not enough to casually think positive every once in a while. You have to deliberately train your thoughts, feed your mind with vision, and nurture it daily. You have to see yourself winning even when you're losing. You have to imagine yourself rising even when you're struggling. Because the more vividly you can hold that picture in your mind, the faster reality begins to catch up with it. Think of athletes before a big game. The best of them don't just train their bodies, they train their minds. They visualize victory before they step onto the field. They play the winning moments in their head before they even happen. Why? Because they understand that once the mind accepts a victory as possible, the body will work to make it real. The same principle applies to every area of life. Your business, your relationships, your health, your personal growth. Each of them begin as a decision in your mind before it becomes a fact in your life. Success doesn't show up by accident. It shows up because someone believed in it long enough to chase it. And belief is born in the mind. If your mind is full of excuses, you create excuses. If your mind is full of possibilities, you create solutions. The way you think determines the way you act, and the way you act determines the life you build. That's why your thoughts are not small or meaningless. They are the architects of your future. When you understand this, you stop underestimating your imagination. You stop dismissing your inner dialogue. You stop letting fear dominate your thinking. Instead, you start guarding your mind like a valuable asset it truly is. You start feeding it with vision, with learning, with hope. You start aligning your thoughts with the kind of future you want to experience. And once your mind is in alignment, success is no longer just a dream. It's a destination that becomes clearer with every step you take. 3 days may not sound like much, but the truth is, 3 days of speaking intentional words to yourself can spark a transformation that lasts for a lifetime. We often underestimate the power of short, focused actions, but everything in life that grows begins with a seed, and a seed doesn't have to be big to change everything. Your words are seeds, and when you choose them carefully, plant them consistently, and water them with faith, the results can be bigger than you ever imagined. 3 days of intentional words may be the beginning of the new version of you. The stronger, more confident, more focused, more determined you. For most people, the reason their life looks the same year after year is not because they don't want change. And it's not even because they don't try. It's because their self-talk is on repeat, playing the same negative script over and over again. They wake up saying, I'm tired. They face a challenge and say, I can't. They look in the mirror and think, I'm not enough. And every time they say it, they reinforce, just like engraving the same story deeper and deeper into their heart and mind until it feels permanent. But the beauty of intentional words is that you can interrupt that cycle. Even if you've been talking down to yourself for years, 3 days of talking up to yourself can begin to scratch a new groove, a new pattern, a new possibility. When you give yourself 3 days of intentional words, you are reprogramming your thoughts. For 3 days, instead of saying, I'm not smart enough, you tell yourself, I'm growing wiser every day. Instead of saying, I'll never succeed, you declare, success is coming my way because I'm prepared to receive it. Instead of whispering, nobody believes in me, you boldly say, I believe in myself. And that's enough to get started. At first, it might feel strange. It might feel fake. But the truth is, your brain doesn't know the difference between a word spoken in doubt and a word spoken in faith. It only knows what you keep repeating. And what you repeat becomes what you believe. And what you believe becomes what you live. Imagine the power of waking up for 3 straight days and giving yourself a script of victory instead of defeat. You look in the mirror, and instead of pointing out your flaws, you speak about your potential. You face the day, and instead of predicting failure, you speak about possibilities. You confront obstacles, and instead of saying, I can't handle this, you declare, this is making me strong. 3 days may not change your entire life, but it changes your direction. And the direction you move in determines the destination you eventually arrive at. Think about how powerful habits are. Most of the habits that define your life began small. Maybe it was the first time you skipped something important because you didn't feel ready, and then you made a habit of shrinking back. Or maybe it was the first time you chose discipline over comfort, and then you made a habit of pushing yourself. In the same way, 3 days of intentional words can plant the habit of self-belief. You may not see the full tree in 3 days, but the seed is in the ground, and once it's planted, it has the potential to grow as long as you keep nurturing it. The reason 3 days can be so life-changing is that it gives you a glimpse of what's possible. You get to experience the difference in your energy, your focus, your confidence, even in such a short period of time. When you see that difference, it becomes hard to go back to the old way of talking. You realize that the old script was keeping you small, while the new script is lifting you higher. And once you taste that difference, you'll want to keep going, because no one wants to return to a prison after they've tasted freedom. Intentional words are not just about positivity, they are about power. Positivity says it will all be okay. Power says I will take steps to make it okay. Intentional words direct your mind to take ownership of your life instead of being a victim of your circumstances. They remind you that while you can't control everything that happens around you, you can control what you say to yourself. And what you say to yourself determines how you respond to life. If for 3 days you consistently remind yourself that you are strong, capable, and worthy, your responses to challenges will automatically rise to meet those declarations. Picture this. Someone has been struggling with self-doubt for years, never applying for opportunities, never speaking up, never chasing a dream. Then they commit to 3 days of intentional words. On day 1, they speak strength into themselves. And suddenly they feel a spark of courage to send in that application. On day 2, they tell themselves they are enough, and they find the confidence to share their ideas out loud. On day 3, they declare that their future is bigger than their past, and they make a decision to leave behind the fear that held them back. 3 days of intentional words may look small, but the ripple effect can change the entire course of a life. The human mind is like soil. It doesn't care what seeds you plant. It will grow whatever you put in it. If you plant negativity, the soil will grow it. If you plant doubt, the soil will grow it. But if you plant intentional words of faith, confidence, and vision, the soil has no choice but to grow those too. 3 days is long enough to plant those seeds deeply enough that you begin to see sprouts of change. And when you see the first sprouts, you'll know the harvest is on its way. Sometimes people think they need months or years to see change, but change often begins in a moment. 3 days is just the starting point, but it's enough to break the momentum of negative self-talk and replace it with momentum toward growth. It's enough to prove to yourself that you are not powerless over your own mind. It's enough to show you that transformation doesn't start on the outside. It starts with your words, your thoughts, your beliefs. 3 days of intentional words is not the end of the journey, but it is the spark that lights the fire. And once that fire is burning, it can warm your future for the rest of your life.